2012, Dallas, Texas. A new homeowner moves in, but the first to greet her aren't the living. A ghostly dog and the spirit of a woman begin to warn her of a danger still lurking inside the house. When Renee first stepped through the door of her new home, the air felt heavier than it should. The house was neat, its walls freshly painted, yet something seemed unsettled. At night, the silence pressed in around her, too thick for a neighborhood alive with families and dogs barking in the distance. The unease grew quickly. It began with scratching sounds in the hallway, as though an animal was moving through the walls. But when she searched, nothing was there. One night, while washing dishes, she felt fur brush against her legs. Startled, she looked down, only to see the faint outline of a dog. It wasn't alive, and yet it stared at her with eyes that seemed desperate to communicate. Soon, the dog was not the only presence. A woman's figure appeared in fleeting glances, reflected in mirrors, standing at the foot of the bed, drifting down the staircase at dawn. Renee described her as sorrowful, as if carrying the weight of something unfinished. Days turned to weeks, and the encounters became warnings. Cabinets slammed on their own, doors rattled violently when Renee tried to ignore the voices whispering her name. The dog's spirit would bark furiously at corners of the house, guiding her away, almost hurting her like it was trying to save her from something. It wasn't until she confided in a neighbor that the truth began to unravel. Years before, in the late 1990s, the house had belonged to a young couple. The woman was trapped in a cycle of abuse. One night, her husband's rage ended in murder. Her body was never recovered in full. Rumors whispered she had been buried nearby, hidden in haste. Their dog, fiercely loyal, was killed trying to protect her. Authorities suspected foul play but lacked evidence. The husband left the state, and the tragedy was swallowed by time, sealed over by drywall and renovations. Yet the land itself remembered. Renee realized the apparitions weren't random hauntings, but desperate signals. The murdered woman and her dog had bound themselves to the house, repeating their final moments, replaying warnings that no one had heeded. They weren't there to harm her. They were trying to save her from the same danger that had destroyed them. For not long after, Renee discovered her new landlord was none other than the murderer's brother, still tied to the family's secrets, still lurking around the property with threats that soon became very real. And that was the chilling twist. The spirits were not haunting her for the sake of haunting. They were protecting her, pointing to the hidden rot still connected to the home. Because sometimes, the dead do not stay behind to terrify the living. Sometimes they stay behind to warn them. Renee would later say she never felt alone in that house. Not because she feared the dead, but because they refused to let her fall into the same trap. Every flicker of light, every bark of the spectral dog, every sorrowful glance from the murdered woman, it was all part of a desperate warning. When the landlord's threats turned violent, police finally intervened, uncovering evidence of the long-buried crime. Forensic teams discovered fragments of the woman's remains hidden near the property, confirming the whispers that had haunted the neighborhood for decades. The murderer had escaped justice, but his family carried the rot forward, and the land itself refused to let the truth die. Renee survived, but never returned. She left the house empty, where neighbors still claimed to see a glowing dog pacing the yard and a shadowed woman staring from the upstairs window. Because some hauntings are not born of malice, they are born of unfinished screams.